one of the arguments you see amongst the traditional martial arts crowd is the argument over traditional versus classical. A lot of people will just ask the question, what makes something traditional? And a lot of people say, well, we prefer to use the term classical. And I'm honestly one of them, though I do use the word traditional as well. And they're not synonyms, not really at all. So the word traditional literally just means something that's been passed down. And when you're looking at that, right, something that's passed down and something that's traditional could legitimately be something that's been passed down only one generation ago. It could be a personal or family or lineal tradition in the sense of my teacher, my father, my whatever, my senior taught me this, and thus I'm teaching you, and thus you have created a tradition. Now, look, most people aren't going to accept, a one generation tradition as true tradition. They're going to be looking at something that has maintained a certain standard or identity over the course of multiple traditions, or over the course of multiple generations. Take that for what you will, right? People's criteria on that are different, but in that sense, people will say, well, is jiu-jitsu traditional? And the answer is yes and no. Is boxing traditional? Mostly no, but in some cases, yes. There are arguments based on strict literary definitions versus how we think of martial arts. And then in the sense of classical, right, we're all familiar with like the Greek classics and whatnot, but classical in like literary definition really means like in the class of the highest order, right? It's like comparing something to a very high standard, a bar setting standard. Now, a lot of times we don't necessarily mean that something is equivalent to that thing that set the bar. What we often mean is that something is trending in that direction or mimicking something that was of the higher order. Like basically saying, look, there's a standard and we're trying to reach or match that standard or even exceed that standard. And by the way, it's hard to use the word in the definition, right? When we say class, literally class just means you belong to a group. I mean, it's just a social division, right? And this goes back to like Rome and Greece. Obviously, all these definitions will be in the Substack, but like that's all. But when we say something is classical, it generally means that we are looking for, in the realm of martial arts, we are looking for something to fulfill the intended purpose at the point of its creation and development. And look, martial arts are never done. But if an art is developed over the first couple of generations around the idea of we are facing a certain problem and here is our problem solving toolkit, what we're looking to do is fulfill that art in the sense that it is still capable of solving that problem. And if that problem has evolved, we do want it to evolve along with solving that problem, because the ethos of the art is in the problem, the strategy to solve that problem. When we say something is traditional, all we mean is that we are doing things the way that our teacher or our teacher's teacher did them. And so something can be both traditional and classical, but oftentimes what we call traditional martial arts are very removed from the classical ideals that the arts were developed under. If an art was not developed for sport and all of a sudden it has become a sport and it has changed to adapt to the rule set and the confines of the sport, it is no longer living up to its classical ideal. It has changed and become something else. But there's challenges with all that, right? Because like on the one side, humans have been punching and kicking and grappling forever, but on the other side, the nature and how we do those things and how the strategies and tactics have become so much more widely known, and there are so few secrets anymore and all that. The way that has changed has meant a necessary evolution and adaptation. And because people are not fighting in the streets the way that they once did, and not dealing with like banditry and piracy and stuff the way that they once did, means that in order to even test ourselves and legitimize our skills, we have to turn to things like sports, because there's just not another outlet. And we know that an untested skill kind of doesn't work very well, because you never know how you're going to deal with something in the live environment if you never go live. And so there's challenges with this. But generally speaking, when somebody says that they're doing classical martial arts, what they mean is, yes, they're probably doing a traditional martial art, but they're trying to uphold the original intent, the original standards, trying to solve the original problems and keeping things in context. And then, if necessary, also expanding, not replacing, but expanding that context to deal with the evolved problem set that we deal with in the modern world. That's really what we mean by classical. When we say something's traditional, we really just mean it's something that has been passed down generation after generation, generally speaking, as opposed to it follows biological principles and psychological principles and things like that, or is just, kind of loose form, do what you want to do. Here's just some general guidelines. That gets into trouble too, right? Because at some point, everything's traditional. Everybody learns from someone. Now, it does indicate that it's been passed down, which means that there's an inheritor, not somebody learning secondhand, from books or videos or stuff like that, right? Because that's not really a passing down in the truest sense. You're not inheriting something, you're just learning information. Inheriting something generally implies that you're working with somebody and learning their methodology and what they're after. And even if you're not after an aesthetic or even the exact same expression, you might be after the same ethos, the same ideas, the same principles. So it depends on what's being passed down and all of that. So traditional and classical can overlap quite a bit, not linguistically, but in the world of martial arts, they can coexist, and pretty much all the time, classical is going to coexist with traditional, but not always. If you look at HEMA, reconstructing dead arts, that is both modern and classical, because there's no lineal tradition. There's nothing being passed down. We're relearning and reconstructing stuff out of source material that is not a living lineage. And so in that sense, HEMA is classical without being traditional. So you gotta play your cards right on this one. And again, this, what do I always come back to? It's just be specific. Don't be afraid to define your terms. Don't be afraid to look up terms. Don't be afraid to admit when you got something wrong. And at the very least, right, if there's ambiguity, there's so often some ambiguity, just say, I am working within this definition. I understand that there may be alternate definitions or criteria outside of this, but I want to work within this for the sake of my argument. What's your counter argument, right? Be intellectually honest about this stuff, but traditional versus classical, it's probably not going to be an argument that goes away anytime soon. And you're mostly only going to hear it in the traditional martial arts crowd, but it's a valid discussion to be had. All right, I will talk to you guys later. Good journey. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share. Check us out on our other socials, and please head over to blacksunboxing.com to get a little more info, including how to contact us. Furthermore, if you are in the Phoenix area, please feel free to stop in, say hi, join in for a class, whatever. Also, if you ever see us cite sources or just for additional content, please check out our Substack. That is where we put all of the sources we use in our videos and is a major part of this. Plus, it serves as a membership platform for long distance learning and for people who would like to support us but aren't local. We would greatly appreciate it if you signed up. Even just the free membership helps us out a lot. All right, I will see you guys in the next video. Good journey.